published, 0:09 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 12th of May 2018, updated, 5:45 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 12th of May 2018. Polls opened across Iraq on Saturday in the first national election since the declaration of victory over the Islamic State group. After weeks of official campaigning, no clear frontrunner has emerged as Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi faces stiff competition from political parties with closer ties to Iran. In central Baghdad, voters supporting al-Abadi said they are doing so because they give him credit for Iraq's military victory over IS. An Iraqi woman shows her ink-stained finger after casting her vote in the country's parliamentary elections in Baghdad, Iraq, Saturday. Kurdish women being searched as they queue to vote at a polling station in Erbil, Kurdistan. Iraqi women queue at a polling station in the Wadi Hajar district of Mosul, the main city held by ISIS in Iraq, leader of the Conquest Coalition and the Iran-backed Shia militia Badr organization. Hadi al-Amiri prepares to casts his vote at a polling station during the parliamentary election in Baghdad. Iraq security forces stand guard outside a polling station during the parliamentary election in the Sadr City district of Baghdad. People queue in front of a polling station in the Wadi Hajar district of Mosul as the security forces stand guard. A member of the Iraqi Federal Police speaks to a man outside a poll station in the capital Baghdad's Farada district. An Iraqi woman prepares to cast her vote in the country's parliamentary elections in Baghdad, Iraq. Electronic voting has been introduced in a bid to cut down on fraud. In total, 329 parliamentary seats are up for grabs. Al-Abadi took revenge for civilians killed in insurgent attacks in Iraq with the victory over Daesh, said 71-year-old Faliha Hassan, using the Arabic acronym for IS. After IS overran nearly a third of Iraq in the summer of 2014, the group launched waves of suicide bombings, targeting civilians in Baghdad and other pockets of government-controlled territory. With support from the U.S.-led coalition in Iran, al-Abadi oversaw a grueling war against the extremists and declared victory over the group in December. Since then, Baghdad has experienced a relative lull in insurgent-style attacks, but in the lead-up to Saturday's vote, Iraqi security forces have imposed tight security measures including a curfew. Despite al-Abadi's military achievements, Iraq continues to struggle with an economic downturn sparked in part by a drop in global oil prices, entrenched corruption and years of political gridlock. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi arrives at a polling station to cast his vote in the parliamentary elections. Al-Abadi having his biometric voting card checked with his fingerprint upon arriving at a poll station in the capital Baghdad's Farada district. Bahram Saleh, head of the Coalition for Democracy and Justice, and his wife, show their ink-stained index fingers after voting at a polling station in the Iraqi Kurdish city of Sulaymaniyah. A voter has his biometric voting card checked with his fingerprint upon arriving at a poll station in the capital Baghdad's Farada district. The results of Saturday's election are expected within 48 hours of the vote, according to the independent body overseeing the election. The election sees dozens of political alliances battling it out for the 329 parliamentary seats available. Government formation negotiations are expected to drag on for months after that as the dozens of political parties attempt to cobble together a political bloc. A campaign poster of Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi seen in Baghdad, Iraq. No frontrunner has emerged in the poll, but he is hoping to benefit from the victory over ISIS. Another key player in the vote is influential cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. He commanded fighters in the war against IS and headed a powerful militia that fought U.S. forces in Iraq before that, but his election campaign has focused on social issues and eliminating government corruption. Iraqi Shiite cleric and leader Muqtada al-Sadr shows his ink-stained index finger inside a polling station in the central holy city of Najaf. Some Sunnis voting Saturday said they are hopeful this election will help Iraq move beyond sectarian politics and become more inclusive. Marginalization of Iraq's Sunnis under al-Maliki is seen as a factor that allowed IS to rise in power in Iraq. Al-Abadi has led a more cross-sectarian government marked by his ability to balance the interests of his two allies, often at odds, the U.S. and Iran. In total, there are 329 parliament seats at stake, with nearly 7,000 candidates from dozens of political alliances. The vote will be conducted electronically for the first time in an effort to reduce fraud, and polling centers have been set up for many of the country's 2 million people who remain displaced by the war against IS. The results of Saturday's election are expected within 48 hours of the vote, according to the independent body overseeing the election. Government formation negotiations are expected to drag on for months after that, as the dozens of political parties attempt to cobble together a political bloc large enough to hold a majority of seats in parliament. The Prime Minister's most powerful opponents are his predecessor, Nouri al-Maliki, and an alliance of candidates with close ties to the country's powerful, mostly Shiite paramilitary forces. Iraq Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi speaks during a campaign rally in Baghdad. Iraq campaign posters for parliamentary elections are displayed near destroyed buildings from fighting between Iraqi forces and the Islamic State group in Ramadi, Iraq, 70 miles west of Baghdad. Abadi's most powerful opponents are his predecessor, Nouri al-Maliki, and an alliance of candidates with close ties to the country's powerful, mostly Shiite paramilitary forces. An Iraqi couple arrives to cast their ballots in the parliamentary elections at a polling site in the shadow of the Nabi Yor shrine, destroyed by Islamic State militants during their 3-year reign in Mosul. The alliance, called Fatah, Arabic for conquest, is headed by Hadi al-Amiri, a former Minister of Transport who became a senior commander of paramilitary fighters in the fight against the IS group. Many of the candidates on his list were also paramilitary commanders before they cut their official ties with the force in order to seek office. Jassim Mohsen, 58, who fought against IS with the paramilitary forces, said he's casting his vote for the alliance because of their personal sacrifices. "I elected the Fatah list because they are the only ones who fought Daesh and gave blood," he said. An Iraqi election registrar assists a voter in placing his ballot through a counting machine into a ballot box at a poll station in the capital Baghdad's Farada district. Voters, nearly 24.5 million of Iraq's roughly 38 million people, are registered to vote. They are spread out across 18 provinces. Voters can cast their ballots at 8,959 polling stations across the country, all of which are equipped for electronic voting. According to Iraqi authorities, nearly 11 million biometric identity cards have been distributed to authenticate identities. The 285,564 internal refugees eligible to vote can do so in one of 166 polling stations in 70 camps spread across 8 provinces in the country. Voters will select party lists and seats will be divided up according to the number of votes each list secures. Polling for Iraq's roughly 1 million security force personnel and the 1 million voters living abroad was held ahead of the main election day. Candidates: there are 6,990 candidates, including 2,011 women, set to run in the polls. They will be competing for 329 seats, including 9 reserved for minorities, Christians, Shabaks, Yazidis, Mandaeans and Faili Kurds, and 83 for women. Candidates, selected based on their position in the party, will be elected to 4-year terms in parliament. There are 87 party lists in this year's election. Main lists of parties: Victory Alliance, led by incumbent Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. Here, for the first time since the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003, the ranks of the executed leader's oldest opponents, the Shiite Dawa Party, are divided. Abadi, a key figure in the Dawa Party, has put together a list composed largely of civil society personalities that cross sectarian lines. Iraqi Vice President and former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki shows his ink-stained finger after casting his vote at a polling station in Baghdad. Conquest Alliance, led by Hadi al-Amiri, head of the Badr organization and a leader of the mostly Shiite Hashd al-Shabi paramilitary units, which played a key role in rolling back Islamic State, is group jihadists. His candidates officially quit their military roles to run for office. Rule of Law Alliance, led by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. This list relies principally on the Dawa Party, which Maliki heads. but while it is popular with public servants hired under his mandate, the list suffers from criticisms aimed at Maliki because it seized one-third of the country under his watch. Marching towards reform, an unprecedented alliance between Shiite leader Muqtada Sadr and communists. It includes mostly secular groups including the Iraqi Communist Party and Istiqama, Arabic for Righteousness, a party of technocrats backed by Sadr, who suspended his Arab bloc and called on his 33 ministers not to run in the polls. The National Alliance, led by Vice President Iyad Alawi, a Shiite who presents himself as secular, and Sunni head of parliament Salim al-Jubairi. Weakened after 3 years of his rule, Sunnis could be the biggest losers in this year's elections. Kurds head to polls to fill their northern autonomous region's 46 seats, 2 of which are reserved for Christians. The main Kurdish parties are the Kurdistan Democratic Party (KDP) and the Kurdistan Patriotic Union (PUK). There are also 3 opposition parties, the main Jamaah Islamiyah, the newly created New Generation Movement, and Goran Kurdish for Change. Source: AFP.